Hi, my name is Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss further dodgy dealings when it comes to the Prime Minister's unlawful behaviour. In this case, he or someone close to him, his lawyers perhaps, appear to have blocked a criminal investigation into his misuse of public money until after the general election. But first, if you want to be notified of my future videos, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon. So let's recap what is known and what remains suspected about Boris Johnson's unlawful behaviour over the last few years. So it begins with the Vote Leave campaign during the 2016 Brexit referendum. This was run by a number of senior MPs, mostly Conservative, but not all, it has to be said, as well as other figures such as Dominic Cummings. But it was essentially Boris Johnson and Michael Gove that were in official charge of the group. That campaign have since been found to have broken electoral law. That's set in stone. The people in charge, including Johnson, withdrew their appeal at a politically convenient time, so the verdict stands: the campaign broke the law. There then needed to follow a criminal investigation. So the charges which the campaign were found guilty of could only elicit fines because it's for an organisation, not a person. But those same charges have criminal equivalents to be laid against the individuals responsible. Again, if a group breaks the law, certain individuals must have been responsible for it. Essentially, those individuals responsible, and it's the criminal investigation's job to get to the bottom of who was responsible. So for the longest time, the Conservative government, initially under Theresa May, slowed down the investigations into criminal activity in the Brexit referendum, and the opposition did nothing to shine a spotlight on it. It even culminated in the head of the Metropolitan Police, Cressida Dick, saying, well, there's no issue, and then shortly afterwards being rewarded with a damehood. That was it, I thought. Corrupt government corrupts the police now. And for a while, I thought that the police would fight this because there was a time when they were complaining of political interference earlier in the investigation. But it seems that that political interference eventually beat them into submission. But then there was a little ray of hope. Recently, the Metropolitan Police handed over the files of evidence to the Crown Prosecution Service. Now, this is the group that decides if evidence gathered by the police and other investigators is strong enough to lay charges in court. But of course, nothing's happening with that at the moment. Now, with Boris Johnson being one of the two people at the head of the group, and this group known to have broken the law, Johnson personally must be implicated in this investigation. Then there's the shenanigans in August and September this year in shutting down Parliament for weeks. This was deemed unlawful by the Court of Session first and later by the Supreme Court. No arguments about that one. Boris Johnson personally broke the law and the highest court in the land said so. No punishment for it, which always seems a little odd. Ordinary people, if you're found to have broken the law, you will receive some form of punishment, even if there were accepted mitigating circumstances, which certainly don't apply in this case. But the point is that Johnson definitely broke the law in this regard, and the country's top judges unanimously agreed. So we can say he is a criminal. Well, not necessarily a criminal, but a lawbreaker, shall we say. Then there is the Arcuri scandal. Now, the latest investigation to be put on ice for political purposes. So during his time as Mayor of London, as well as pissing away tens of millions of pounds of public money, Johnson spent the relatively paltry sum of, it was £100,000 in one block, and then there were various 10,000, 12,000, so it was a bit over £100,000 on an American lady with whom he appears to have been having an affair at the time. Certain there has been no denial from either party. The money was supposed to be used for technology lessons, but was also supposed to be used for British-based businesses. But Arcuri seems to have been given preferential treatment and isn't really based in the UK. I remember when this was raised in Parliament recently and the government said that, well, there's a telephone number there, that's a British telephone number. But Tom Watson, deputy leader of Labour at the time, said that he rang it and got through to California. Funny British number, he thought. Now, when the various grants were being awarded, Johnson failed to declare a personal friendship with Arcuri. And civil servants also complained that Johnson was allowing Arcuri to accompany him on business networking trips around the world, government business, or in his case as office of the Mayor of London, at the British taxpayers' expense. And all of these payments given to Arcuri just for agreeing to let Johnson have a quick fumble were considered appropriate by both Johnson, unsurprisingly, but also by various Conservative ministers when asked. Now, when the news broke relatively recently, it looks like another case of the government blocking investigations into itself. but much of that money was spent while he was Mayor of London, not a minister. Well, there's a new Mayor of London now, and he's no friend of Johnson. The current Mayor, Sadiq Khan, launched an investigation and demanded documents from the government. This they provided, but on the understanding that it would not be made public. I imagine the decision for that would happen later. Now, a police investigation was begun into misconduct into public office, an offence which can be punishable by life imprisonment. Now, before you get all excited, that's the maximum sentence, and although we know that Johnson has no sway over our courts, he does hold sway over various agencies that are needed to bring this to court. And this isn't something that a hero such as Gina Miller can do independently. That's really civil cases. This is something that only the police and the Crown Prosecution Service can deal with. Unfortunately, as evidenced by the announcement that the investigation is not going to take place, or they've not announced whether there's even going to be one until after the general election, it's clear that there is political interference from government to stop the police doing its duty. And although the opposition never put any pressure on the police previously to carry out their duty, there is no opposition to government right now in a very real sense. Parliament has been disbanded. The country has no MPs. There are no MPs. There are only government ministers. They have sole charge of the country until December the 13th at least. And if Boris Johnson, as the Prime Minister of a minority government, can exert enough control over the police to delay and block investigations into serious criminal offences now, who really thinks that these investigations will go anywhere if he is returned as Prime Minister, even of another minority government next month? So let's look at exactly what the situation is to explain just how serious it is. So the independent police watchdog was supposed to be announcing, which is independent of the police, but clearly not government, was supposed to be announcing whether or not Boris Johnson should face a criminal investigation into his part in the Arcuri affair. When I say affair, I mean political affair, not their shared interest in horizontal jogging, by the way. Now, that decision is not being made public until after the election. And the reason being, of course, that Johnson doesn't want even more bad press during the election campaign. Now, if anyone accuses him of breaking the law in this matter, he can just say, absolute rubbish, I'm not even being investigated, which is true. But consider this, if the independent police watchdog, which are clearly anything but independent, did not believe there was a reason to investigate, then Johnson would not be blocking them from making the announcement, would he? After all, although doubt over the matter is better than him being actively investigated, not being investigated is better than doubt over the matter. Better to be able to say that the police, the watchdog, have concluded that there's no evidence for unlawful behaviour, there's no point in investigation because it's clear rubbish and the case has been dropped. So the only logical conclusion is that the police do think that a criminal investigation is warranted, or the police watchdog think that the police should investigate, that there is strong enough evidence that the Prime Minister has formally committed an offence of misconduct in public office to warrant getting the police on it to gather more evidence. And this is what strikes at the British sense of fair play, I think. So people were saying that the Supreme Court judgments showed that nobody was above the law, even the Prime Minister. But it's not quite true. All we can actually say is that the courts have not been corrupted. You know, the courts will not consider him above the law. That's what we can say there. But criminal investigations won't even make it to the courts unless the police can carry out an investigation. And that when that evidence is gathered and formed, it needs to be passed on to the Crown Prosecution Service. The Crown Prosecution Service needs to be able to say, yes, this is worth pursuing. And the police, at least, as well as the police watchdog, seem to have been tamed if we consider their actions in both the Arcuri case and the Vote Leave case. Now, the independent police watchdog, in terms of its reasoning for not making the announcement, is citing Purdah. And this is the concept that applies during a general election campaign. It basically means certain government or related agencies do not make announcements during an election campaign. It's supposed to stop a government using the civil service for party political purposes. Though in this case, it's doing the opposite. There is a list of organisations, however, bound by Purdah. And this watchdog, the independent police watchdog, is not on the list. So you look at it and you think, well, this is the list of organisations bound by Purdah. You're not on it. you can't really cite Purdah. And then just to be sure, various journalists contacted the Cabinet Office, which is the brains of the civil service in the UK, and they were asked, is this organisation bound by Purdah? And they were not able to say that it was. So it's a clear case of government interference in what is supposed to be an independent body. And there we are. I hope you found the video interesting. If you have, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for further details as well. And until next time, I'll see you later.